this was as demoralizing as it gets. You're swept in Chicago. Even Pete Alonso had this to say, and I think summed it up pretty succinctly when he described what it was like losing to the Cubs over these last three.
Well, getting swept feels like eating a sandwich, to be honest with you.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Appreciate your honesty there. What do you think it was like to watch it? Now, obviously, nothing is going to feel good after that trip, but there are some things that make me worried about this team's early struggles. Obviously, the situational hitting was abysmal in Chicago. You're 3 for 20 with runners in scoring position in the series. You left 25 guys on base in this series. And, of course, the low light coming in extras with Dom at the plate, bases loaded, he grounds into a double play. That's a problem. That was a problem last year. It's continued to be a problem this year. The other thing, Moose, though, is the trickle-down effect of what we're seeing when your starting pitchers outside of DeGrom and Stroman can't get out of the fourth inning. Because it does start to tax the bullpen. This is something we talked about more with the Yankees than we have with the Mets. But you have Walker, Peterson, and Lucchesi gave you 10 combined innings in this series. Now, the bullpen had good moments last night. Sean Reed-Foley was a revelation. You had Loop. You had May. That was all good. And then you get to Edwin Diaz. So, fantastic in the ninth. But, Moose, there are rules with Edwin Diaz. Remember the Jabba rules? Of course you remember the Jabba rules. You're a huge Yankee fan. But I thought we all knew the Diaz rules. The Diaz rules are one clean inning. That's the Diaz rules. We all know that's the best way to maximize Edwin Diaz. No runners on base, clean inning, one inning. That's how you want to get the best out of Edwin Diaz. And he's going to be so important to you this year. And last night, the Mets and Luis Rojas violated the Diaz rules, and they paid for it, losing in extra innings.
Yeah, they did. And I that's where I'll get on the manager, Rojas, is I just don't understand why you bring Diaz in for that 10th inning with a man on second base. It just... it's not going to work. We've seen it. We talked about it during the course of the offseason. You look at the way that Diaz needs to be used in order to be successful. He's not Mariano Rivera. He's not Trevor Hoffman. He's not this elite-level closer that you could throw in any situation and he's going to get swings and misses. There are ways to use Edwin Diaz to get the best out of Edwin Diaz. And as an organization, you need to know that. Now, maybe the Mets got a little bit greedy last night with Edwin Diaz and tried to push the envelope early on in the season to see maybe if that dynamic has changed or that narrative has changed. And, the narrative has not changed. But, Diaz was putting in, I thought the Cubs were going to score a run there. They eventually did. They eventually walk off the Mets, win the game 4-3. And I know you're going to blame Edwin Diaz and say what he is not. Well, I think we have to understand what he is and use him in that style and fashion. For the Mets, listen, I know David Off wrote a column today in the New York Post. What's the Mets' identity? I mean, we're 14 games into here, the MLB regular season. I don't know if we know exactly what the Met identity is wholly and fully. I do know this. I mean, they were terrible over the 3 games in Chicago. The situational hitting, which was awful last year through the first 30, 35 games of that 60-game season, is terrible once again. I think with batting with runners in scoring position, I think if you look at the advanced stats according to MLB, I think they're 29th in baseball. I mean, they've just been terrible, grounded into 5 double plays. The Dom Smith at bat last night with the bases loaded, just terrible. So, you look at this team. You mentioned the starting rotation. That clearly has defined them with DeGrom and Marcus Stroman, but they did not get those starts out in Chicago. But the cavalcade of errors about why they failed in Chicago. The defense, the situational hitting, the starting pitching, maybe a managerial gaffe. We can get into the home plate umpire and some of the calls at home, and the Mets maybe getting a little bit squeezed. You like the power that Pete Alonso showed you. Maybe Conforto's starting to wake up a little bit. I think the offense is going to be okay. The situational hitting, which was an issue last year, continues to be an issue. And I think if you're Luis Rojas, you tested Edwin Diaz, you learned a lesson last night early on, and don't test him again. It's got to be one inning. It's got to be a clean inning. He can't come on with guys on base, second and third, anything like that, and you're expecting Edwin Diaz to be successful. It is just not going to work.
Well, he comes in, obviously, in the 10th inning and hits the first batter, and you're like, well, this is going to be an adventure, and we all know how it's going to end. Honestly, I thought the Mets blew their opportunity in the top of the 10th inning when they had the runners, they had the bases loaded with Dom up, and he grounds into a double play. I'm like, they're losing this game. But you had Diaz come out. He hits the first batter. This is going to suck. And it did. And I worry about Diaz because obviously confidence is a huge thing with this guy, right? That's not a given that he turns the page that quickly. And he had been pitching very well. You know, there's one gaffe, one slip up, I guess. What was that against Miami? But, you know, he had been pitching well if you just use him in the right way. And Rojas was asked after the game, why was Miguel Castro only brought in for one batter? And he said, well, I used him the night before in a blowout because you needed to get him work because you hadn't used him in a while. So you use him in a blowout. Then you use him for one batter. Then you can use some of your other high leverage guys. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it because I believe the Diaz rules have to be written in stone, permanent ink. Where was Familia? Where was Familia? And you could say, Maggie, what the hell? You know what Familia would have done there. Well, I don't know, Moose, because the Diaz rules have to be in stone, and I don't know why Familia was not called upon there. And I know. But you painted yourself into a corner, and we know that Diaz can't handle that. So, not can't handle it, but we know that's not his best. So, all around, very, very frustrating for me with the Mets.
I don't think confident. I think Diaz will be able to bounce back. And I don't mind a manager trying something early on in the season to see if the narrative has changed with Edwin Diaz. I don't mind that, but really offensively is where this team failed this series. I mean, it just did. The errors in the blowout loss is one thing, and the Mets embarrassed themselves. The Baez grand slam. I mean, that game got out of hand. That game got out of whack. But I mean, you ran through it. They were 1 for 8 last night with runners in scoring position. They left 25 men on base over the course of 3 games. I mean, the offense has got to be there. We can look at Joey Lucchesi not going deep. I mean, Peterson didn't go deep because the defense had failed him. I mean, all over the place. We know that Taijuan Walker lost the plate after the challenge. So, I mean, there's reasons why the starters did not go deep. I don't have concerns about really this rotation. Maybe outside Lucchesi. I think Peterson will bounce back. I think Walker will bounce back. We know how good Stroman is. We know how good DeGrom is. I mean, it's time for this offense to get going. I mean, that is, McNeil found his rear end on the bench last night. I mean, that is Conforto to go along with, obviously, Pete Alonso, Dom Smith, all the names that we've talked about with this team and what made you excited about this being a really, really good offense that can beat you in a lot of different ways, that isn't just reliant on hitting the ball over the fence. But once again, I mean, you thought it would change early on here. Once again, they're a terrible situational hitting team. And it's not from not having guys on base or not having traffic on the base pass, whatever baseball cliche you want to throw out there. They're just not getting hits when they needed it. Dom Smith needed to come through with a hit. Francisco Lindor had opportunities in this series, didn't come through with those hits. I mean, those are situations where your offense has got to pick some guys up as well. We can look at it. The staff is not going to be perfect. Edwin Diaz is not going to be perfect. I mean, and you look at, there's not a lot of viable options when you look at that bullpen. They needed to score some runs and put up a crooked number in that top half of the 10th inning. And you had arguably, really your second best hitter on the team this season up with the bases loaded, and Dom grounded into a double play. Got to come through with it there. Got to push across some runs. Give Diaz a little bit of flexibility in that bottom half of the 10th inning and go win a baseball game. That's where you need your offense to pick you up. And we've watched this Mets offense once again flail around, and that's why they got swept in Chicago. In the middle, and one of the games, they got completely and utterly embarrassed.
Yeah, you got Javi Baez hitting lefty, like, for the hell of it. I don't know. And then you have more here with the Mets, right? More in this early season where you're just not sure. Lots of guys playing out of position, not their natural position. I mean, we were kind of expecting that, but maybe are we seeing even that sort of permeate where guys aren't feeling as sure as they, should be in the field, and are they bringing that up with them to the plate? We talk about this with the Yankees all the time. Is it happening with the Mets also? So there's a variety of things that unfortunately have all come to light here with these last 3 losses with the Mets. And you saw, Rojas did try to really shake things up. Luis Guillorme, not just playing third for J.D. Davis, who ended up coming in and obviously with a huge clutch hit in the 7th to tie the game at 3. But leading off. I mean, they're really trying anything and throwing some stuff up against the wall here to try to shake this up. And unfortunately, for Jeff McNeil, it really hasn't done a whole lot. So he comes in with a big opportunity, late in the game, ends up not being able to come through. I mean, it's just like, obviously no panic, nothing like that. It's just that's as low as it can get when you're slinking out of Chicago after getting beaten the way that you were. And listen, thankfully, like normal teams,
come home for DeGrom.
Right. And normal teams, you're like, well, that's a no-brainer. But have they really fully moved on from the disappointment behind Jacob deGrom's storyline? They did the last outing, but we got reams and reams of numbers that will tell you that they are more likely to lay another egg behind deGrom tonight than they will actually put together something for him. So, there's just a lot there. It's hard to come out and be like, yay, rah-rah Mets today, because what you saw was just bad. It was just bad all around.
I mean, they got swept in Chicago. So, I mean, then it would be basically you're drinking the Kool-Aid with both hands. Yeah, there are decisions that have got to be made about this team. The third base with J.D. Davis, who continues to hit and continues to rake, comes through with the big hit late in the game last night in the seventh inning that tied the game up. You love to see that. I mean, ultimately, you're going to have to deal, and you're going to have to hope that J.D. Davis doesn't absolutely kill this team defensively at third base, because the bat does play. I mean, it just does. And when he's going offensively, he presents another challenge for the opposing pitcher to go up against. So I don't know exactly, aside from, Guillorme playing third, where are the other options to improve this team defensively? You just really are what you are. I mean, that's it. I mean, they've signed up for this. This is the train that they hopped on with Nimmo in center, Dom Smith in left. Maybe you can get a little tricky at third base. J.D. Davis can make that difficult decision if he continues to go out there and hit, but they're not all of a sudden going to do some drastic change to improve this team defensively. Maggie, they got to really, we talked about with the Yankees, there's too many good bats in this lineup. You got to start hitting. I mean, you got to start generating some offense. Michael Conforto wants the big contract. Time to put the big boy pants on. I mean, he's already gotten dropped in the lineup. It's time, if you're Michael Conforto, to start hitting. Pete Alonso's starting to hit. Dom Smith had an opportunity. Francisco Lindor, who just got signed to the 10-year contract. And this is not going to define him the first 14 games here in the regular season as a Met, but you paid him a lot of money to come through with big-time moments and big-time hits. Francisco Lindor has left you wanting. So, offensively, we can look at, Rojas, maybe a nitpick about a decision here or there, and we can get on Edwin Diaz in the bottom half of the 10th inning last night. We can look at certainly the defense. The defense was decided upon by Sandy and company. That was ultimately the decision that they made in the offseason. They had an opportunity to improve this team defensively and really shore up and make it really, really sound. They decided to pass. So, you're going to have to live with it. The offense has got to pick this team up. Similar in nature where we have these conversations with the Yankees. If they're going to struggle like this with runners in scoring position, then you know what? They're not going to be a particularly good team this year. They're just not, because they don't have a lot of other things that can overcome it outside of the starting pitching.
Well, the Yankees were getting clutch hits last night. Felt good to watch the Yankees be able to break through in a big spot. We'll get to that. But honestly, Mets fans, I mean, I know you're not feeling good. There's no way you could be. But what is concerning you most about this team with their early struggles? Is there one thing that sticks out above the rest?